but I want to call attention to two people who try to be very invisible when they're on stage. And can we give a warm hand to our sign language interpreters? I have deaf in my family, so thank you. It just shows you walk the talk. Brad, thank you for the kind introduction, and I want everybody to know that Brad Parker and the Defense for Children International Palestine, they have been tireless advocates, key advisors, great partners. Thank you so much, Brad. And tonight's very special for me. There are so many amazing, I got to hear the presentations, committed people in this room. You've dedicated time and energy and resources with your hearts, with your souls, for fighting for Palestinian rights. So for me to be recognized for my work, I mean our work, it is humbling and I'm deeply appreciative. So this conference is being hosted by the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights, and collectively, you are the champions who come from every corner of our country. But I need to give a special thank you and my deep appreciation to the campaign's DC-based team, Joseph, Leah, and Josh. Your support, your collaboration, your advocacy, I appreciate. I know my Chief of Staff does in our office. Thank you. And it's because of your collective work with your great partners that we are establishing a narrative in Congress that promotes Palestinian rights. And as I said, I'm honored to be here tonight, but I'm also have to point out I'm honored you're in my congressional district here in St. Paul. So I just have a quick jaunt up the hill. It's about a 20-minute walk, but I'm not going to walk tonight. And so I just want to thank you for hosting this conference here in my neighborhood. Now, I'm able to receive this award not just because of my work, but because of my constituents in Minnesota's 4th District. They send me to Congress. They expect me to fight for progressive values, human rights, and policies that respect and elevate our human shared dignity. As a representative, I am a reflection of the people who elect me. So my work to promote peace, attack poverty, defend the rights of children, stand in solidarity with the oppressed, including the Palestinian people, is because I have the support of my wonderful constituents. Now, as Brad pointed out, last November I introduced a bill in Congress, and it's called Promoting Human Rights by Ending Israeli Military Detention of Palestinian Children, shorthand HR 4391. It's not a complicated bill. It says that U.S. aid to Israel shall be prohibited from being used to arrest, detain, abuse, torture, or otherwise violate humanitarian law and the human rights of Palestinian children. Now we know thousands and thousands of Palestinian youth have been victimized by the Israeli system of juvenile military detention over the years. We know that because of UNICEF, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Israel's B'Tselem, Salam, DCI Palestinian, and the U.S. State Department have all documented Israel's brutal treatment of Palestinian children. Now, as an American and as a mother, I don't think it's particularly controversial or a statement of moral courage to condemn a government that systematically arrests and abuses children. I don't think it's particularly controversial, but as a member of Congress, I don't think it should be a statement of political courage to say that the U.S. government should not spend $1 of our taxpayers' funds in supporting a brutal military detention that abuses children. Now, in Congress, you would think that that makes common sense. But yet, this is not the case when it comes to protecting Palestinian children and when the government doing the abusing is Israel. With H.R. 4391 moving forward, we are making a clear, unwavering statement that we are not going to support U.S. tax dollars funding Israel's cruel, brutal, and dehumanizing system of juvenile military detention of Palestinian children. So let me say a big thank you to all my congressional co-sponsors, our partners in the faith community, our NGO champions, everyone in this room representing advocates and citizens all across this country. This bill is a statement of unity, never seen before in Congress. It unites us in our common belief in human rights. It is a statement of our shared values of freedom, equality, and justice for the Palestinian people. You all need to know that the members of Congress co-sponsoring this legislation, there is a profound commitment to Palestinian rights. And I admire their willingness to stand with me because it's not easy. We are confronted by a right-wing pro-Israel lobby that supports Israel's brutality and groups like Christians United for Israel that work to promote settlement expansion and delegitimize Palestinians to justify their religious extremism. But there's a truth we're fighting for, and that is that the Palestinian people deserve freedom, justice, and equality, just like people anywhere in the world. They deserve to be citizens of an independent Palestine state, and they deserve to live their lives without fear in their own homeland. Now, my goal with H.R. 4391 is to offer, as I said, an alternative perspective, to force policymakers to think about the $3.8 billion in U.S. aid to Israel and how that helps to enable, facilitate, and enforce the military occupation of the Palestinian lands and the repression of the Palestinian people. Yes, people in Israel, the Israeli people, they deserve security, and Israeli children deserve security too. But imprisoning, abusing, traumatizing another generation of Palestinian children in the name of security, it's a lie. And we need to call it what it is. Israel's military detention system is a weapon of occupation that terrorizes Palestinian children and their families into submission. And I don't want my tax dollars or yours to go to support that. As Americans living in the era of Donald Trump, it's easy to fall in the trap of hopelessness and despair. Yet the Palestinian people face hopelessness and despair along with 50 years of military occupation, and they continue to have the courage to persevere. And for the Israelis and Jews and Arabs who reject racist policies, occupation, and the extreme Likud Netanyahu government, I also commend their courage and their perseverance. A few weeks ago, you should applaud them. A few weeks ago in the coffee shop at this hotel, I met with an amazing woman who was struggling for freedom, for justice in her country's democratic future. Her name is Aid Suleiman, and she is a citizen of Israel. And she is also a Palestinian member of the Israeli Knesset. She's fighting Israel's recently passed nation-state law, which codifies separate and unequal. It is a standard of racism that the United States rejected and outlawed more than 50 years ago. He has written and told me, rather than working on equality for the benefit of all citizens, irrespective of race and religion and ethnicity or national affiliation, Israel will now promote a development of an exclusive Jewish communities. Friends, the world has a name of that form of government that's codified in the nation-state law, and it's called apartheid. In this case, thank you, but what Brad didn't tell you is I'm a former teacher. And I appreciate, it's overwhelming, thank you very much, but I'm going to get through the speech. So she really inspired me with her courage and her determination. And she's there with a lot of other Israelis, and they're battling their own extremist government that's delegitimizing and dehumanizing her very existence. And it's this concept that I think about the future, not just for Palestine or for Israel, but for the future of our own country, the United States. We are now living in a nation which the policies of the President of the United States and his administration are explicitly bigoted, dangerous, and demeaning to all Americans. Think about a few of the destructive, dangerous policies advanced by this president. The Muslim ban, the separation wall with Mexico, immigrant family separation, child detention, rejecting refugees, the only nation in the world to withdraw from the Paris Climate Agreement, and reneging on the Iran nuclear deal. Cutting taxes for the wealthiest Americans while sabotaging health care for the most vulnerable Americans. It isn't a wonder that Benjamin Netanyahu knows that he has a green light to advance an apartheid inside of Israel, or endlessly expand the settlements, or for Israeli security forces to force a massacre of scores of unarmed protesters in Gaza with complete impunity. Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu are partners intent on destroying the future for the Palestinian people. There is no peace process. The U.S. is no longer an honest broker. There is no illusion of this White House even caring about Palestinians. The White House point person in the Middle East is Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, a U.S. ambassador to Israel, David Freeman, a bankruptcy lawyer by trade, and a right-wing extremist by choice. And over the years, Kushner and Freeman have invested financially in sustaining West Bank settlements, settlements that violate international law. The two top American officials leading the U.S. government policy on Israeli Palestinians are not diplomats. They appear to be more like settlers, right-wing settlers, who actively seek to expand Israel's control over Palestinian land, livelihoods, and the future. It's appalling. It's also the reason why we're witnessing the Trump administration and the Republicans in Congress making every effort to extinguish any hope or possibility of an independent Palestinian state. A few days ago in his press conference, President Trump articulated his vision of the Palestinian conflict, calling the peace agreement a real estate deal. President Trump said, if the Israelis and the Palestinians want one state, that's okay with me. If they want two states, that's okay with me. I'm happy if they're happy. These are the profound words of the so-called leader of the free world, but it gets better. Mr. Trump then went on to explain that China has great respect for him because of his very large brain. We needed to laugh. Policy actions by this White House have explicitly targeted Palestinians and their interest in their efforts to reward the Netanyahu government. It's very clearly that the unilateral relocation of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, the termination of U.S. aid to the Palestinian Authority and UNRWA, and the eviction of the PA's office in Washington are intended to delegitimize Palestinians of having status, rights, or even an identity in their homeland. And the termination of aid, U.S. aid, to non-government organizations providing health care, education, humanitarian assistance to needy Palestinians is nothing more than a policy of blatant cruelty intended to inflict hardship and make vulnerable people suffer. It's shameful, but then again, it should come as no surprise. President Trump tried to eliminate health coverage for 30 million Americans. Why wouldn't he cut health care to Palestinians? In Congress, Democrats and Republicans need to understand that the cost and consequences of 50 years of military occupation, Israeli settlements, checkpoints, separation walls, soldiers, have made an independent Palestinian state all but impossible. There is clearly no reason for Palestinians to have any faith or any trust in America's current president. But we must not allow them to lose faith in the American people. As Americans, as progressives, we must strive to make freedom, justice, and equality, human rights, economic opportunity, and hope for the foundation for future U.S. policy for engagement with Israel and Palestine. It must be accountable, and Israeli oppression must not be supported by U.S. tax dollars. The status quo of today must be rejected. A democracy. Think of this. A democracy, a real democracy, does not accept second-class citizens. It does not segregate communities. And it does not sponsor discrimination or military occupation. If the one-state solution is an inevitable endgame of the Trump-Netanyahu axis, and I hope it's not, I pray it's not, but if it is, then the American people must demand a U.S. policy explicitly requiring conditions that include equal rights and full citizenship for all Palestinians. So the burden for U.S. advocacy to improve the future for Palestine, again, is on your shoulders. Your commitment and your dedication is essential. Now, we're in a dark place, but I also see a progressive movement that is awakening and is willing to push back against the powers that once seemed so invincible. Even in Congress, there's a growing group of Democrats who are disturbed and disillusioned by the conduct of the Israeli government. It allows for more open discussion among policymakers than ever before about Israel's accountability. Let me be clear. Holding the Israeli government accountable for its abuses is not anti-Semitic. It is just being responsible and just. And if we can hold President Trump and the White House accountable, then why can't I hold a foreign government accountable for how they abuse an entire population of people under their control? But there is good news. I I believe there's a change coming to Congress in the new year, where there are strong, progressive women and men who will be coming to Washington who will certainly have their voices heard. And I'm certain these new voices will bring new energy to our movement. But a significant burden is still on us to expand the coalition of NGOs, faith groups, elected leaders, and citizen activists. Because Palestinian rights are human rights, and we must make them a litmus test for politicians and faith leaders and leaders in our civil society. Now, I can't guarantee that our goals and missions of peace and justice and equality and freedom for Palestinians will succeed. But I know we can't be silent. The hotel we're in tonight is owned by the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, a tribal nation located a few hours north from here. In Congress, I have made working with tribal nations a priority of mine. More than 20 years ago, 2 women mentored me on Native American issues. They taught me the profound meaning of sovereignty. They were the late Marge Anderson, chairwoman of the Mille Lacs Band, and Melody Benjamin, the current chairwoman of the Mille Lacs Band. Because here in Minnesota, this was not our land. It belonged to the Ojibwe in the north and the Sioux in the south. European settlers took this land from Native Americans. They subjugated them. They committed atrocities. And for more than a century, the US government imposed state-sponsored policies to distinguish their culture. The intergenerational trauma, the suffering from these abuses, they continue to be real. The healing is slow, and it is painful. But tribal nations are fighting for their rights, their dignity, and their future, and they are a vibrant voice in the present and in the future of our state and of our nation. And I am proud to stand with them and work in partnership to help them protect their rights while building a better future for their children and generations to come. And that's the same commitment I make to you tonight and to the Palestinian people. It's a long road ahead. There must be peace, reconciliation, and real hope for a better future before the healing can begin. But we need the American people and our government to stand with the children of Palestine and to stand with their parents, because they deserve their rights respected, their voices heard, and their future to be one of hope, one of opportunity, and most importantly, one of peace. Thank you for allowing me to join you this evening. Thank you for recognizing me and the co-sponsors of our legislation. Let us work together. In the words of the Ojibwe, Miigwech.